Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Okay, Seth Rich, back to what I was saying. Seth Rich was a DNC staffer who was murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C. years ago. And it was a strange set of circumstances because originally the narrative was that he was robbed, and yet his wallet was found on his person. I believe it was his watch, his other belongings were on him. So it was odd, and it sparked a lot of questions because it didn't appear to be a robbery that went bad. A lot of people wondered exactly what Seth Rich had been involved in. That's kind of the background. As I said, the "Who Killed Seth Rich" had become somewhat of a catchphrase on the right to question the deep state, I guess you could say. I hadn't heard that in a while until John Rich tweeted or posted it on X last night. And you responded with not just a comeback, not just is this a conspiracy? You responded with an explanation about something that happened in the wake of the murder of Seth Rich that I did not know, had not heard about. Could you expound on that for us now?
Who Killed Seth Rich post stirs up more questions. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, our Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. Well, the murder of Seth Rich occurred on July 10th, 2016 at 4:20 in the morning in the Bloomingdale neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Rich died about an hour and a half after being shot twice in the back. The perpetrators were never apprehended. Police suspect that he had been the victim of an attempted robbery, but the 27-year-old Rich was an employee of the Democratic National Committee. Beyond these facts, the story of Mr. Rich becomes completely riddled with multiple layers of what appears to be disinformation and deception messaging from elements within the United States government. WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange made comments early in the investigation that are still generating impact on the story today, and I believe prevented his freedom for a long, long time. More information in the case only continues to come to light due to attorneys for Matt Couch, who is sued by Rich's family for his reporting on the case, successfully getting a judge to order the FBI to release such Rich's laptop and tape and DVD drives in a court case. So country music star John Rich posted the other day, "Who killed Seth Rich?" The meme phrase, and it generated the show that you just saw the opening for with Liz Wheeler. Thankfully, we've seen some coverage from the case, like that Liz Wheeler show with Mike Benz, but no one has interviewed the one person who knows the most about the case, Mr. Matt Couch. Matt's been investigating the Seth Rich murder for 9 years. 9 years. And he's my guest today to give us an update and enlighten us on the background of the case. He's the publisher of the DC Patriot and a sports TV radio personality, political pundit, and a whole lot of other great things, and my good friend. Matt, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. You know what, buddy? It's been a year since you were on the show, and we covered this case a year ago, and here it is again a year later, back in the news. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Colonel. Great to see you. One of my great friends and mentors. Always a pleasure to be on with you. It's always amazing. My investigations team and I, we have fought this battle for almost a decade now, and it's amazing how all of these so-called mainstream media personalities, if you will, whatever we're calling them, I call them the conservative cool kids club. They were never in the middle of this fight when we were in federal court getting decimated, right?
Right.
I can't talk a whole lot about that, as you know, but we just getting absolutely destroyed. We fought for the truth. We had a reporter, who, I'm not going to name, who spent a week in the Ecuadorian embassy with Julian Assange, who came back to us with information. I mean, I could tell you how they were paying their sources through eBay and PayPal and things of that nature. There's a lot of different, things that we know. But it's always amazing that these talking heads always try to come in and talk about this investigation, and they don't even know. I don't even think they know where to start, if that makes sense. Rob, I don't get it. I saw the John. John knows me. All of these people know me. I mean, where I'm going with this, Colonel. But not one person has picked up the phone. Kash Patel is completely read in on the Seth Rich investigation. He was the pit bull at this time. He was Devin Nunes's pit bull for the House Intelligence Committee. I met, and I might as well say this now, who cares at this point, right? I met with George Pappas, the chief of staff, for Devin Nunes, and presented information on the case in 2018 at the Rayburn building. All of these people are read in on this investigation. They know. President Trump retweeted me over 50 times on the Seth Rich investigation. Think about that for a second. Back, before we were all just hammered and banned on Twitter, X, or whatever we're calling it nowadays. It's just, I don't know where to go with this other than I need to write a book. I need to put the truth out. We need to put the information that we have out. But I can tell you right now, I see the narrative. MS-13 had nothing to do with killing Seth Rich. We've seen that narrative pushed out and pumped out. That was a disinformation campaign. First off, and Colonel, I know D.C. I spent a lot of time in D.C., so have you. D.C. gang-wise is not race-driven. It's territorial. The gangs in D.C. they're not going and beating somebody up because it's a territory thing. And MS-13 would have never been over near LeDroit Park where he was murdered. MS-13 doesn't leave you alive for a ride to the hospital. And then the one thing, that no one really, that we broke this story is why was Donna Brazil and Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C. and the head of the DNC, at the hospital within minutes of Seth Rich's arrival for what everyone in the media has called a, quote, low-level staffer for almost a decade. There's so much to this case. I'll turn it back over to you and just kind of you can loft stuff up and I'll field whatever questions you guys have on this. But it's unbelievable that through all of this and all of the stories, not anyone from any of these conservative or mainstream media outlets have ever picked up the phone. And I want to, we've got guys on our team like Full Nelson. A lot of people know him on X, an amazing investigator. High-level attorneys like Ty Clevenger and Eden Quainton who have fought with me for almost a decade on this. Another great friend of mine, Ed Batowski, who just literally sacrificed everything. He's a wealthy guy, but a patriot, loves his country. Frank Whalen, the head of NYPD Homicide for 23 years. Bill Pierce, another lifelong 35-plus year private investigator. And I'm going to leave some people out here. I mean, certain guys I would mention names, but it's not their real names. They're intelligence officials. You know how that game is played. Just every time I go to D.C., I meet a dozen new defense contractors. So, but with that being said, you can guide this wherever you want. You've got me for the hour. I'll answer whatever questions you have, Colonel.
I'm glad you mentioned Bowser and Brazil. Did your team ever depose them in the lawsuit case?
No, we did not. And, I have I think it's in an appeal stage right now, a lawsuit where, I have, sued, Michael Isikoff and Verizon and Yahoo News. I mean, they did a 6-series podcast about yours truly and basically, said that I was an agent of the Kremlin and did the bidding of Vladimir Putin. But yet that same judge, that was over the original suit against me has no problem tossing that one out or trying to. So, it's a dirty game, the lawfare that's being played right now. We're seeing it right now with everything President Trump is trying to face in D.C. Everything his cabinet members and officials are trying to face in D.C. That's what the Democrats do, Colonel. They use lawfare, and they tie you up in court, and they sue your families, and they try to decimate you and destroy you and financially bankrupt you, and not to mention the emotional and mental toll that takes on you. That's what they do to try to cover up the truth. And but yeah, the whole Mayor Bowser thing, her attorney sent me a letter. This has been many, many years ago, trying to get me to shut up about it. And of course, I wanted the deposition, right? My attorneys wanted it.
Yeah.
And of course, I made a smart ass remark out on social media. because they dated the letter wrong. They dated it the wrong year. It was like a year ahead. They put their attorneys put the wrong year on there. And I, of course, my sense of humor. I said, Washington D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser's attorney sent me a letter from the future, and so we wanted that confrontation. They've never been deposed. Why the members of Congress? We've got some great guys in Congress. Ask yourself why the Republicans are so scared to touch this case. I mean, and our source, Julian Assange, told our source, certain things that I can and can't say here, but basically, how they were paying their sources, which is through, they would put items up on eBay with crazy names like Julian Assange's, bouquet gift basket, and would literally be, listed at $85,000. And Julian Assange told one of our sources who met with him, spent a week with him in the Ecuadorian embassy. He told her, he basically said, hey, look, could I buy something on eBay and pay for it with PayPal and have it shipped to me here at the embassy? And her response was, yeah, sure, Julian, I guess you could do that. And she said he then had a smirk on his face. And he said, I'm not saying that's how it happened, but I could do that, right? And we started putting two and two together, and we started digging in, and we started finding all these oddball listings on eBay, like a scented candle for $55,000, like WikiLeaks' you just put two and two together, and it's, he was trying to give us, the way that he was paying sources. Right. And still nobody, I mean, you have to ask yourself at some point, do they really want this solved? Because I think it's the thing that brings the entire house of cards down. There is no Russia. It is Seth Rich. They brought in a fraud like Guccifer, and Guccifer 2.0 to try to throw everybody off of this. We believe, Seth Rich was a Bernie bro. He had found out that they were rigging the primary. It's the reason why Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign in shame, and Donna Brazile became the head of the DNC. They were rigging primaries against Bernie Sanders. Basically, what they would do is they would send voters for Bernie that signed up through the DNC to a location that there was nowhere to vote. And then Hillary's people would go to a location where they could vote, and then they were wiping the floor with Bernie, we believe that's one of the many things that Seth uncovered.
Yeah, isn't it amazing the level of fraud that the political parties do on their own voters? I've always suspected that that's the core of fraud. It's one of the things that keeps the incumbents at a 90-something% reelection rate, for one thing.
It's unreal, Colonel. It's unreal what we're seeing here with this. And
at the beginning of all this, we got a couple minutes to the first break, but at the beginning of all this, and I'm going to show two more clips from that Liz Wheeler thing with Mike Vince, because Vince, he lays some stuff out that aren't directly related to the case, but he says are results of the Seth Rich murder. And now that I can see it, I think I believe him. But did you ever think that at the beginning of this, that this conspiracy, and it is a conspiracy, folks, there is a conspiracy going on here and a cover-up. But, Matt, did you have any inkling at all just how wide this conspiracy would be?
No, I didn't. I'll tell you, you talk. I mean, like I said, I'm going to write a book one day because I think people would be interested in hearing the truth on this. When you talk about the conspiracy, the first time that my team got on the ground in Washington, D.C., with our investigators, we had about 6 or 7 of us on the ground, was the week before his 1-year anniversary of his death in 2017. And I was walking into, this is some of you may know where I'm talking about. It's literally the tavern where George Washington released his troops after the Revolutionary War concluded, and we had won, and he dismissed his troops there in Old Town, and it's a tavern that he always frequented, and it's a steakhouse now you can go to. And I was walking in with Bill Pierce, one of my private investigators, and a couple other gentlemen, former intelligence people that basically had said, hey, these were former CIA and operatives that basically said, hey, look, there's guys that hire people like us to kill guys like you, and we wanted you to know about this. We're going to flank you everywhere you go while you're in D.C. on these investigations. And but we were meeting with an inside source who was a current police officer with the Washington Metro D.C. Police who had reached out. We became, friends, whatever you want to call it, colleagues, because he told us, hey, look, this investigation, this is not what you think it is. This is not how we conduct investigations. This is not how any other murder investigation I've ever operated was. Make a long story short, I was walking in to have dinner with him, and I'll land my plane because I know we got to go to a break here, but I was walking in to go to dinner with him and to discuss the case, and I literally got suspended for 24 hours on Twitter, as I was walking in the restaurant. Wow. Think about the coincidences of that, knowing that I was on the ground and about to start releasing information nationally on the case.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we got to go to a break, Matt. When we come back, we'll hear from Benz again and continue this discussion about, and the question is still, who killed Seth Rich? I'm Rob Maness.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Well, it's highly relevant today because we are in a period with the potential of mass declassification of federal secrets, from what's happening at the State Department to USAID to Tulsi Gabbard's ODNI new dig effort at transparency. And what happened in 2016, around the time of the murder of Seth Rich, was the emergence of WikiLeaks with an impact on the 2016 election. The entire intelligence community was pulling for Hillary Clinton, who had just been the Secretary of State, which is a frequent stepping post to become president. Her husband was obviously president as well, and very deeply tied to the international statecraft world. And then in the middle of election season, these emails that were part of the DNC server ended up getting posted on WikiLeaks, and it became hugely embarrassing for the DNC. It caused a big divide between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and their camps in terms of showing all the maneuverings that were done in order to ensure that Hillary Clinton was the chosen one. And then, lo and behold, this DNC staffer gets murdered, as you said, with none of his possessions taken. And many questions emerged were about whether Seth Rich was the source of the DNC leaks to WikiLeaks. And then there was email chatter that suggested that some folks in the John Podesta camp were vengeful about the leaks. Immediately after that, you had Julian Assange, who went on public television and said that and suggested that there should be some sort of bounty for whoever can find whoever killed Seth Rich. Now, Julian Assange has a policy at WikiLeaks of not disclosing sources. That way they can.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking with the man that knows more about Seth Rich's murder than anybody else that's walking around alive today, really, Matt Couch, and my friend. Once again, we're talking with him. We've done a couple of shows on this over the years, Matt, and Benz was just laying out there the connections between the Clinton and the DNC and Bernie and the intelligence community and those kind of things. And I just wanted to ask you, now that we have Patel as the director of the FBI, Dan Bongino's the deputy director. We have the president in office. We have Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence. Does your team think that we'll actually get to some hard facts now get released from the government, especially the FBI?
I don't know. I don't know. I trust Dan Bongino. Dan's a friend. I mean, I trust Dan. I like Cash as well. Cash is well read in on this. He was, digging around on things, way back in the day before he was even with the Trump campaign on this case. So these guys are well versed in what happened. But I mean, they always say the wheels of justice turn slow or some nonsensical jargon like that. But I really think that most Americans at this point, with what we've seen, seeing the judges arrested was a nice start. But it's unreal. If the situation was reversed, the Democrats would have 45 indictments by now on things. And I think that's really the kicker. Now, maybe there's stuff happening behind the scenes, but this is the case that would blow the entire house of cards down. And it would, because the situation here is, you're talking about the entire Russia hoax is rolled up into this young man and what he found out. And, if both sides are unwilling to discover this or to talk about it, you would think the Democrats would want to know why one of their own was murdered. The botched robbery narrative, which, we wrote the book on that, our investigators, guys like Frank Whalen and Full Nelson and, our team, we were talking about this in late 16, early 17. I don't remember when we started on this, but we've literally forgotten more about this, I think, than most people know. And the botched robbery narrative, what's interesting about the botched robbery is nothing was taken. We believe he had a thumb drive on him. That we've mentioned that before publicly. We're confident in that aspect that he had a thumb drive on him. That's how WikiLeaks passes information that he had a drive on him. We know that he was at a party the night he was murdered that nobody, and I can't mention any names here, but nobody would talk about. Even though we know he was there, we had a few people that said, yeah, he was there. That he was at a party the night that he was murdered. The murder happened at 4:19 a.m. In the intersection of Flagler and Northwest. LaDroit Park, which is it's the projects, which is not far away. They had a witness, which they never put out in the public police report, who just happened. Now, Colonel, you've got a long-standing military background. When I say this, you're going to probably chuckle a little bit. The witness that, of course, we left business cards, my PIs did at all three of her known addresses in D.C. The witness just happened to, I'm just going to lay this out for everybody at home, if you believe this, of course. The witness just happened to be, it's a hell of a lot of accolades, Colonel. She just happened to be a pro MMA fighter, a pilot, a vet tech, and she worked for Leidos, for the CIA. So, I mean, what were the chances that she was out walking her dog, at that exact time and saw two men speaking Spanish running into the dark? They laid this out perfectly and laughably. It's insane when you put all this together. And we uncovered a lot of things here, including the witness, that nobody else had ever talked about. I could even tell you, the engine number that showed up, the ambulance. We tried to talk to the EMTs. They stonewalled us as well. Think about it. Not even like hard stonewall. Seth Rich's roommates would not talk about. What would freeze everyone up to not talk about a young man's murder? Why would people, close to him, like roommates, and friends, colleagues, why would they not want this solved? And I think the question answers itself, don't you? Yeah,
I think it does answer itself. Ty Clevenger is there's a Gateway Pundit article out in the last couple of days, I think, detailing his letter, asking for the FBI to be held in contempt. His letter to the DOJ to Pam Bondi, the AG, because the FBI is still withholding information that they're supposed to be releasing to him based on a judge's order.
Well, they should be there. Every time that this is the one thing that I've learned. Every time a three-letter alphabet agency doesn't want to release information, they claim in the best interest of national security. And all they have to say to a judge is, this would violate national security, Your Honor, if we released it publicly. Every damn time. It doesn't matter what case it is. How many times have we seen this across the board as conservatives in this country when we're trying to get to the truth, and all you hear is national security, national security. Well, if he wasn't the leaker, then how in the hell would it violate national security to release his laptop? And the biggest thing about the FBI is they've lied from inception. They told us they never had the laptop. They never took possession. Well, hell, after, we dug through, after FOIA requests and subpoenas and everything else, hell, not only did they have the laptops, they recorded the drives.
Right.
Well, they've got the drives, both his work laptop and personal laptop, after claiming they didn't have them. And we know that the FBI has a CART division in Washington, D.C. We know for a fact that they use they use Cellbrite, which is an Israeli forensics digital company, which helps governments around the world. And you're probably, with your background, you're probably well familiar with Cellbrite, Colonel. They literally use Cellbrite. And my point is, if they had to use Cellbrite to get into a computer, you're into some heavy stuff. Would you agree, Colonel?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
If they had to use Cellbrite to get into a laptop, which they did, we know they did, that right there speaks dividends of what the young man was into.
It does. It does. And here's a big picture question for folks out there in TV land, too, in addition for Matt, is the guy works for the Democrat National Committee, which is a non-government private organization. He is not a government employee. What business is it of the FBI's to say that this is a matter of national security because some Democrat National Committee emails were leaked to the public? Because the Democrat National Committee is a private organization. All of these organizations, these political party organizations and campaigns, are all private organizations. They're not government entities. They have nothing to do with national security. It's my estimation, Matt, that the FBI is covering for the Department of Justice because they went and put this thread together and Vince will talk about this in the next clip and going into the next segment a little bit more. But they put a thread together to cover Rich's leak to WikiLeaks as Russian interference, as you mentioned earlier. The FBI is covering for the DOJ on that, or they're both covering for each other because the FBI might have been involved in it. But
we have emails, Colonel, between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok about Seth Rich. We've got the emails.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. Why would Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were literally texting and tweeting and whatever about how they were going to bring Donald Trump down? We have legitimate emails. Full Nelson, one of the guys on our team, and Larry Beach, another gentleman. Pro tip out there, neither one of their names are Larry Beach and Full Nelson. But, at the end of the day, they're great investigators, former intel guys. Point I'm trying to make is that we found the emails. We broke that story as well. We were digging through a Judicial Watch FOIA request that they totally botched and missed, and the emails were there literally, and it was Page and Strzok talking about how they were going to squash the Seth Rich investigation. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll squash it. Literally, you can go to dcpatriot.com and find the article with the filings in there. Why would the two most disgruntled FBI agents in possibly history be talking about squashing the Seth Rich investigation, Colonel Maness?
Well, maybe he was involved in that insurance policy that Lisa Page talking about. Oh, wait a minute, was that real? Yes, it was real. As a matter, I think you're absolutely right, and I think there's some CIA involvement in this too. And
can I ask you another question too? Something else that my attorneys have brought up to me. Why won't Metro DC Police take and seize the laptop? It's not in their possession right now, but it's an unsolved murder. Why won't they go get the laptop? Why won't the police go retrieve the personal laptop from who's got it and investigate this?
Yeah, why did they make it an FBI investigation anyway? It's a local police law enforcement matter, right?
Yeah. Well, the FBI never touched it until all of a sudden they did, right?
Exactly.
It's amazing. The cover-up in this is so outlandish. It's up there with JFK. It's up there with all the conspiracies that you want to talk about. I think the only difference here is we've got facts. We've got documents. We've got witnesses. We've got facts, and not one person in Washington, D.C., in a congressional office, in a USA or U.S. assistant attorney role, will touch this.
It's
Why?
amazing. It's amazing. The why is the big question. I think there's an answer to it, and I think it's right in front of our faces. And we'll hear again from Benz when we come back from this break, Matt. And he lays out the consequences, the ultimate result of the Seth Rich murder, which happened years later, but we can see it in full view right now because Trump managed to get reelected. We'll be right back with Matt Couch. Who killed Seth Rich? That's a question of the century, I think.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at WVWFoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
The point is Seth Rich, his death was not only covered up, and as far as we know, there's really still no active investigation, and the FBI seized all the original evidence, as they do in all these cases. This is why I always say the FBI is where evidence goes to die, because they collect all the originals, and then nobody gets to retain their own copies, and then they can simply kill something in an ongoing investigation that never ends. But the fact is they used that as the predicate to create CISA, the DHS censorship agency that effectively swung the 2020 election, as far as I'm concerned. Their work resulted in tens of millions of tweets being categorized as misinformation incidents and being targeted for censorship. And YouTube, Twitter 1.0, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, Discord, they went after everything on social media. They claimed that over 7 million tweets were misinformation narratives about Dominion voting machines. While their job was to stop the voting machines from being hacked, they were simultaneously censoring anyone who questioned the voting machines. So they were both in charge of security and in charge of censorship of anyone who questioned security, the very same small cluster of people. But then just to bring this to a close here, DHS then set about saying that questions about Seth Rich themselves were disinformation. And in a DHS report that I publicly posted and done many videos about from October 2019, they explicitly target Roger Stone and Sean Hannity, and they have a whole matrix grid about how anyone who questions the death of Seth Rich has to be stopped, has to be categorized as disinformation, has to be put on DHS's disinformation kill chain and treated as a cyber threat actor. So not only was Seth Rich's death used to create this censorship beast, the very specific incident was then targeted as a basis for domestic censorship.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And there it is right there. CISA was created. This is the downstream outcome of who killed Seth Rich is important. CISA, the agency that is the censorship agency of the Department of Homeland Security, founded by Chris Krebs, who later was fired. Okay. The man that famously said 2020 was the most secure election in all of American history without evidence. That's where we're at. That's why we can see it in full view. CISA and DHS swayed the 2020 election amongst all the other thousands of pieces of evidence that we have that election was rigged. And I believe it was. We have this concrete outcome that we can see in plain view. And my guest today is Matt Couch, who has been investigating the Seth Rich murder for 9 years now, almost since it happened, knows more about it than anybody else, has been sued over it. And then that clip before Ben talks about how lawfaring and defamation suits, Matt, or one of the sledgehammers that have been created by the intelligence community, rooted out of the MI6 guy from the UK. And we see that being practiced. That's what's being practiced against you, to try to censor people that have spoken out about these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's lawfare across the board. I mean, you see it on so many different facets of our legal system and our judiciary, and it's terrible what happens. They do everything they can to silence you. They know that you can't afford the kind of representation it takes. You have to understand too, the dark money that funds these kind of operations to silence those trying to talk about the truth. They don't have to worry about legal fees, right? It's pro bono, nonsensical BS, and then you find out that some random donor donated $7 million to their law firm or something. It's ludicrous how this works, and it makes it nearly impossible for anyone trying to get the truth out to fight them. And the government does probably the best job of any to do these types of things. We've seen it firsthand in the last 6-7 weeks playing out with Trump's second term here of the judges. These radicalized judges that are basically refusing to do things. Ty Clevenger, one thing that he did is he was smart enough to sue in the Eastern District of Texas on the Seth Rich case, to where you have a more conservative district, conservative judge, a judge that doesn't put up with a lot of federal bureaucracy. And that has been what's really, give Ty and Eden credit. Ty's an amazing attorney. So is Eden. Eden has been there for me, when both these guys were there for me when, I was offering guys, money and everything else, and nobody would take my case back in the day. And these guys stepped up and helped my family tremendously. They want the truth. They're if you're looking for great legal representation, Ty Clevenger, Quainton Law, those two guys, based in New York and New Jersey, they're unbelievable. And I would highly recommend them. They really restored my life back to some bit of normalcy with all that I was facing and my team was facing and others. And so, but Ty was, it's all about, it's chess, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I hate to use that 4D chess cheesy terminology that so many people use, but you can't sue these people in Washington, D.C. and win, because it's so corrupt with the judges, and they're all at the Thursday night, nightcap place, hanging out with the judges, and it's dirty, Rob. It's dirty. And so that's the only way you beat these guys is you've got to sue them in conservative states with federal judges in conservative states, if that makes sense. I think that's the only way lawfare moving forward. You need to use, the Western District of Arkansas or the Eastern District of Texas, or sue them in Louisiana, sue them in states where they don't have this home base of a judicial branch that is literally anti-American. I'll yield back to you here.
Yeah, that both gives me hope about the future of the country, but also gives me great cause for concern. Because you're seeing all of these Marxist judges, hundreds of them now, at the federal court system level, at the district level, that are trying to do judgments on President Trump for actions totally within his Article 2 powers in the Constitution. It's one thing if it's a questionable one. I get that. But none of these are even questionable. They are totally and completely exposing themselves. And every one of those judges, if you go back and look back at them, especially the ones in D.C., are all tied back to abusing January 6th prisoners and the court system. January 6th, speaking of can't win in Washington, D.C., a January 6er that support, or anybody that supports Donald Trump, can't win a criminal case in D.C. for anything. That court ought to be dismantled by Congress. And Congress has the authority to do that. They created them. But they're weak. Congress is weak. It's cowardly. Republicans own it right now. We're going to lose it again in 2026, more than likely, because they're so weak and they won't act boldly. The reason Donald Trump wins and is able to drag candidates across the finish line is because he's bold. And the American people see that, and he's able to garner enough votes to get some of these weak Republican candidates elected most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. One of the things about Clevenger and his letter, I don't know if you have seen this or not, but one of the things he does,
I might have been privy to it.
he says he accuses the CIA in the letter to Pam Bondi of potentially fabricating, quote, Russian fingerprints, unquote, in the DNC emails to frame Russia and undermine President Trump. Now, I'm going to get called a Putin puppet again, but I don't give a damn. I don't care. We've got to get to the truth of this. And you know what? That statement, that doesn't surprise me. That's the statement I was talking about earlier when I said I'm not surprised by it. But it also, again, Mike Pompeo under the Trump administration, the first one was the CIA director. And he's a Trump guy, supposedly. And we had the opportunity to get this information not out to the public necessarily, but into the hands of the president and his team so they could deal with this and get some insight into it. But I think Pompeo is part of the problem. And
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I think the intelligence, Seymour Hersh, which is the darling of the left. I mean, and again, this is just, I'm just going to go into this because Benz is unfortunately wrong when he says the FBI investigated. They didn't investigate. That's not true. They did not investigate. And right. It's not a, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like these guys come in and they try to take two or three things they've heard, which 99% of what you know about Seth Rich, our investigations team put out and released anyway. And so with that being said, they literally, they didn't investigate. In 2020, I think it was September of 24, the FBI in one of Clevenger's filings said they're not investigating the murder of Seth Rich, and they're refusing to release the laptop information via FOIA request. Which is first off, they can't explain how they have it, but then they don't want to release it. Does that make sense? We don't know how we have it, but we can't release it, because it would violate national security. And then they were naive enough in one of the last filings to say, oh, hell, we didn't know this was still an open case. No, of course we can't release it then. It would hurt law enforcement if we... It's the most insane propaganda outlet that we've seen. With Patel and Bongino in charge, I would love to... here's an open request. And I'm going to speak vividly, but if you would, if Dan Bongino or Kash Patel would like myself and Ty Clevenger and Eden Quainton and my investigations team, Frank Whalen, Bill Pierce, all these talented former homicide detectives, 30-plus year PIs, attorneys, the entire amazing team we've put together, to come and meet with him, I'm really not a hard guy to get a hold of.
Yeah, you're not. I got your number.
I'm not a hard guy to get a hold of. We would love to come and present the information that we have in this case. Yeah. From our reports, our filings, everything. It would be very, very simple to do this.
Absolutely. We're going to take a question from the audience. We got a couple of hands now. They always tend to wait till just before the break. You guys got to get better. Get better here. Go ahead, Shell.
Sir, my hand's been up for like 8 minutes. Just saying. Hi, Matt. Look,
hey, Shell,
Matt,
how are you?
I'm doing well, sir. I hope you are too. I hear the shenanigans. I hear the obstacles that you're talking about. The length of time that since this has happened. Do you have any faith that there will be eventually a resolution to this matter and somebody will be identified as this killer?
I think if they ever do inject a killer into this equation, it will be some patsy nonsense guy that they claim, robbed him and didn't take anything. He even had, a pennant, on him. I can't talk a lot about, but like that wasn't taken as well. That was worth quite a bit of money. His wallet was there, his phone was there. They're calling it a quote unquote botched robbery. This is literally where he was shot, is right across the way from LaDroit Park. And Colonel, I'm sure you hang out in LaDroit Park a lot when you're in DC. It's a lovely neighborhood, really friendly. Only like 4 shootings a week there. But the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think those folks are going to be spooked at 4:19 in the morning while they're rummaging through pockets, right? They're going to get the wallet, they're going to get the phone, they're going to get whatever it was that he had. And Seymour Hersh, we were talking about this a little bit before the last break. How much time do we have, Colonel? I don't want to run over on you. Do I have 30 seconds or?
Yeah, about 30 seconds. Yeah.
I'll make it quick. We can talk about this after the break. Seymour Hersh, the darling of the left, Pulitzer Prize winning, author for the New York Times. Literally, we have him on recording on the record saying that the Seth Rich murder was a Brennan op, according to his FBI sources. And then of course he's tried to say, "Oh, I didn't know." We've got these guys dead to rights on the truth, and nobody wants to investigate it.
Absolutely right, man. We got to take this break. When we come back, though, we're going to shift a little bit after we take a question and continue this discussion about Seymour Hersh and the Brennan op a little bit, and then talk about the first 100 days. And I want to get Matt's favorite moves that the president has made so far. And there's a lot of them that I love. So many that the media is absolutely having a meltdown every single day, and I love it. We'll be right back with Matt Couch on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
In American history. After building the greatest economy in the world in his first term as president, President Trump is in the process of doing that all over again. The American people trust in President Trump. Since his first day in office, President Trump has focused on defeating the Biden inflation crisis, bringing down the cost of living, and making the United States the best place in the world to do business, invest, create jobs, and innovate. And President Trump's efforts are working. 345,000 jobs have already been added since the start of President Trump's term. Last month's jobs report saw nearly 100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and it was the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years. 9,000 manufacturing jobs have been added to the economy already. This is a sharp contrast to the 6,000 manufacturing jobs that were lost each month in the final 2 years of the Biden administration. The U.S. employment rate remains at historic lows. And thanks to President Trump, Americans are seeing price relief for the first time in years. The last inflation report showed the first consumer price decline since the COVID pandemic, a decrease in energy prices, and real average hourly wage growth. President Trump is delivering on his promises to lower costs for American families and businesses. Prices across the board for everyday goods have seen declines since this president was inaugurated. From airfare to used motor vehicles to prescription drugs, prices are dropping. In fact, last month's drop in the price of prescription drugs was the largest ever recorded. And after Joe Biden botched the response to the bird flu, President Trump and Secretary Rollins' aggressive plan have brought down wholesale egg prices more than 50% from Inauguration Day. President Trump ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy and fossil fuels and has restored American energy dominance. And Secretary Wright, Secretary Doug Burgum are working hard on that effort every single day. Oil and gas prices are now way down because of this bold approach. Gasoline prices down 7%. Energy prices are also down as well. The Department of Interior just announced a new offshore drilling policy that will boost oil production in the Gulf of America by 100,000 barrels per day. On the deregulation front, President Trump is committed to cutting senseless red tape, especially for America's small business owners who are the backbone of our economy. We know cutting regulation leads to lower costs and higher growth. The mass deregulation effort by this administration will help usher in the golden age of America, which is underway.
Show. We're talking about, before we move to the first 100 days segment, which I wanted to do with Matt Couch, my guest today, I want to finish this Seth Rich discussion, because who killed Seth Rich has got to be answered at some point. We got one more hand up in the audience over there. Shell, who's got the question for Matt?
We have Colonel Burton, sir.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Colonel. Colonel, just when I thought you couldn't get any more braver, you bring up this topic. So good on you, man. So it seems to me as if this is it's got to be a vast criminal enterprise, right, for this to happen. So since we got Matt here, and he's been, fighting all these forces of what I would call darkness, evil, control, trying to maintain control over us. If you were to map it out, it goes across parties. I can't say it's the DNC. I'm trying to get to who they is, right? Who is they? What organization is it? What does it look like to you? If you could take a moment and just say, having went into this so deep, who's been pushing against you? What's the organized element of this? And then in the after party, I'd love to talk about some things I'd heard about Seth Rich's murder and who it might be, but it's all speculation, but it comes together. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I think when you look at who's behind it, you've got to obviously, it sounds cliche to mention George Soros' money. I think that's obviously at play here. Whoever is controlling, I believe that I don't know that we really know, right? There's somebody that's controlling the Clintons, the Obamas. I believe there's a hierarchy that we probably don't even know. I don't know if anyone's thought about that. I don't know who's pulling the strings of the Obamas, the Clintons, these corrupt folks that are in power, the Loretta, Lynch's, the Valerie Jarrett's, all of these people that are in these positions, Podesta, is another one, who had, Podesta, literally talking about wet works at the Vineyard with Justice Scalia. How this stuff has not been investigated. It's very, very powerful people. There is a stack of bodies. I've always said this, Colonel, I don't care who you are. No one has 85 friends that committed suicide, but the Clintons do. And there's just a stack of bodies. Juanita Broderick, who's a close friend of mine, we've joked many times about if she and I were in a Cracker Barrel that you guys would be discussing how odd it was that a dump truck ran through a Cracker Barrel and killed Matt and Juanita. So, I think I don't believe in coincidences. I think it's very powerful, dark money at play here. I don't know who the real string pullers are, but I believe that there's some really powerful people around the Clintons, the Obamas, and this group of misfits, whether it's John Podesta, whether it's Valerie Jarrett, whether it's Loretta Lynch. I don't think it even matters, who it is. But I think there's some. I don't know who they are, and that's another reason why to start peeling the onion back. Right? Let's start with some indictments. Let's get these people on the carpet, Colonel. Let's do the right thing.
Yeah, let's get into discovery. That's the only way you can get it done. Look. With the benefit of hindsight and what I call today's sight. We can see that CISA was created out of the murder, as Ben's talked about. We can see that that's a DHS organization. We can see that John Brennan on the intelligence agency side was heavily involved and ran an op associated with this. We know that Barack Obama and Joe Biden and John Brennan made the decision to go after Donald J. Trump using Hillary Clinton's campaign's made-up Russia hoax. In that Oval Office meeting that resulted in General Flynn's being fired and pushed through the punishment system of the judiciary, saved by the grace of God, I might add, and Sidney Powell. So we know that it's a combination conspiracy of partisan, government, elected officials, government intelligence agency leaders themselves, which means they have their minions, they have their worker bees working for them. The law enforcement agencies, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Justice, the Capitol Police, the Washington, D.C. Metro Police are all involved in this conspiracy. And I'm going to add one more because now we know about it, Matt, and that is USAID funding of non-governmental organizations. And I guarantee you, when we pull the thread on the Soros spending, his $270 billion that he's gotten of U.S. taxpayer dollars, by the way, to do things like buy district attorneys and attorney generals and those kind of things. Some of that money is being used to do things like try to crush people like you for getting the truth out in the court system through that lawfare. So I'll just add USAID funding in there using our own tax dollars against us, man. That's where it's at. It is a vast conspiracy. It's not right wing. It's not left wing. It's your government and political parties and law enforcement conspiring against you, folks, and they're using your own money to do it. That's where I think really are at. And I'm probably on somebody's list named Hillary Clinton now. But anyway, my intent for this whole segment was to talk about the 100 days. Today's the 100th day of the second Trump administration, and Matt Couch and I are Trump supporters through and through. No doubt about it. Since I cast my first vote for him in the 2016 general, I've been with him ever since. I just got to give you the chance to say, what are your favorite Trump moves in the 47th presidency so far?
Oh man, it's only been 100 days, but it feels like it's been 4 years already. I love the fact that he showed up at the national, football championships, and and I love the Super Bowl moment where Taylor Swift gets booed, and he gets cheered. I think that's amazing. I love the fact that I think the most thing, and it may not be a moment of him himself. He's an amazing man. He was sending me multiple letters when I was in the hospital. He was one of the few people, along with yourself, Colonel. I can probably count everybody on, maybe 20 people total that, you really find out when you go through something like I went through who your friends are. And I was stunned to see that someone like President Trump was sending me hand-signed letters, checking on my health. And that meant a lot to me back. But back on this thing, I think it's seeing him with Antonio Brown and Snoop Dogg having dinner and seeing the people that he's bringing together that said they were going to have nothing to do with him. Snoop Dogg's now hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, looks like, on a regular basis, and he was anti-Trump a year ago. And so he has really brought people together. I feel like celebrities are not scared to hang out with him now, where I feel like people don't give a damn about the liberal media because they're dying. Look at Saquon Barkley telling everybody to piss off yesterday. He's like, look, I respect the office. He's like, look, I just played golf with Obama a month ago. I'm playing golf with Trump right now. I respect the office. Get out of my damn mentions. His exact words on X yesterday. I love the fact that these athletes and celebrities, look at Sylvester Stallone. He's at Mar-a-Lago on a regular basis now. I mean, guys, they're not scared to show their support for him, which I think strengthens our movement, the populist movement. And it really hurts the Democrats right now because what do they stand for? They stand for illegals. They stand for anti-American rhetoric. They stand for, they might as well wear T-shirts that say "I love the IRS" and the back should say "Bring on communism." Like I don't know what their party stands for other than anti-American rhetoric. And I think my best moment for this, Colonel, is the fact that he has brought so many people across the aisle to hang out, shake hands. Have some food, break bread, and we haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in a long time, and I'll just add to you, man. I see this rise of Americanism. That's what I call our version of populism, Americanism, back to where it should be. That's what we started out as, really. Americanism believes in the right to life, liberty, and private property, and that you can work out your differences by talking about it instead of using violence, and that's where we need to go. And that I think we should call him the great unifier. I get MAGA, I love MAGA and everything, but he is the great unifier, Matt. And why that's important to me is because I had really lost hope that I could sit down across the aisle and talk to somebody that's in the other political party and have a reasonable debate and come to some type of resolution that could work for all Americans until this man was able to get back in office. And I'm hoping that we will continue this trend with whoever comes after him, because that's where we need to get back to, instead of all this division that we allowed the Biden and Obama people to give to us. I'll give you the last word, 20 seconds.
all I was going to say, and the little light bulb came on. It's amazing. We haven't heard anything of a North Korean Kim Jong-un rocket firing since Trump took office. It's strange how that works, isn't it?
It is, man. It is. Matt Couch, my friend, great American. Matt, thank you so much for your time. I hope it's not another year, but if I have to, I'll wait another year to get him back on because he's a great speaker about America, and he loves this country, and he loves YouTube. I'll see you tomorrow. Tim Hale, January 6er, will be on with me. He's blowing the whistle on something that's been going on for a while, but it's just not come to light. I'll see you then on The Rob Maness Show.
This is Brannon House Live.